Today on the Dolby Institute podcast, the music of a haunting in Venice from director and star Sir Kenneth Branagh. Joining us today is composer Hildur Guðnadóttir and our regular guest host, music journalist John Burlingame, who's been covering music for film and television for publications including Variety, The New York Times, and now the Dolby Institute. I'll let John take it from here.
You know her work from her Oscar-winning score for Joker, her Emmy-winning score for Chernobyl, and last year's award season favorites Tar and Women Talking. Our favorite Icelandic-born composer is back with a new score for Kenneth Branagh's latest Hercule Poirot mystery, A Haunting in Venice. Welcome, Hildur Guðnadóttir.
Thank you.
It's so nice to see you again.
Likewise, John. Thanks for having me.
So what's your background with writer Agatha Christie? Did you know her stories? Did you know her work?
Yes, I loved her work. And obviously still do. I really grew up reading her novels, and I really grew up with this genre. And this was kind of this used to be my private secret. That's not so private anymore. But I was really raised on on the detective novel Whodunit, storytelling, and my grandmother, who was a brilliant scientist and one of the first female doctors in Iceland, she was completely obsessed with her science and her viruses, and she used to just speak about viruses like people. And she always said that the only way to quiet your mind is to read a good thriller. So that's really that's what I got for my upbringing. So I was, having grown up reading Agatha Christie and Nancy Drew and Sherlock Holmes and all these classics, I had a really strong feeling for how I felt like this genre should be approached and how I felt like it should not be approached. And I'm quite the opposite to my most of my work, where I'm quite explorative of sounds and instrumentation, and building instruments or building sound worlds or found sounds. And I feel like the Whodunit should really just be a classical a classical form that should not be tampered with. That is, so that was really my approach to scoring this film, is that I wanted to really be true to the form and to the genre, and not to try to reinvent the wheel in the in this particular movie, and really just dive into but both of the history of the genre itself and the history of the of the author who was a musician herself, and this is a little known fact about Agatha Christie, is that she also wrote music. She was so ahead of her time in everything that she did, and also I felt that the time that this film takes place is so interesting in the music history, and I think that there's such an incredible well to dive into in the story and this time, because the way that we are that this story is approached is that we spend a lot more time with Poirot and his emotional journey that he is on, much more than in most of the other films that we've seen about Poirot. He's more of an observer, and things are kind of happening more, and he's looking at it from the outside. But in this film, we're following him much more closely than we normally do, and in this film, he's really going through a lot of turmoil and a lot of examination of who he was before the war, what happened to him during the war, and what he wants to be, in the future, in a post-war world where everything is, of course, the whole world is being rebuilt, and he's trying to rebuild himself. So he's in the film. He sets out. He's retired, and he's moving away from his detective past, and he's trying to somehow go in a completely different direction. And I felt that this journey had so many parallels with what was happening in the music history of this time, where composers are really asking themselves, in this post-war world, what is music? What is sound? How are we approaching our instruments? How do we play them? And what is the form we're working in? And what is melody? And how can we kind of throw all of that out the window and completely disregard our past and move into a completely different future that we're building completely anew? And I thought that was quite interesting in this story to plant the sense of time into the sense of melody. So that's kind of what I was playing with. So in the beginning, he because of the supernatural plays a big part of this particular story as well, and in some ways it's somewhat a horror film, and in the beginning we sense that we enter a room where Poirot is waking up, and we're unsure if what we're seeing, if it's a dream or if it's a waking state, or if it's in the past, or if it's the present. And somehow the musicality of that sets out to be almost like a melody, but it's not really a melody because it doesn't go anywhere. So it's kind of living in this bardo state of the time between the times, so that the melody floats in this middle time, or in the subconscious level. And then in the parts of the story where we're experiencing the past, and the looking towards the characters that have that were the victims and have died, there we get the sense of like the romantic melody that enters, and this would be the case for example, like the cues like music without her, which gives us a sense of a certain romanticism. As we start moving towards closer to the present and then into the future, the storyline takes us into a more atonal direction, and we start to throw away the melody as we enter the present, and as the world starts to crumble, the sense of melody also starts to crumble and gets more fractured and frantic, and this would be apparent in a cue like pipes, for example, where it's frantic and in unison, and there's no harmony, and it's just texture and movement. And then in the cue, for example, like Confession, which is the big reveal, and we find out, who done it, and the world is kind of set to order, and we're getting ready to move forward, and we're seeing the future and the world put in its place. And then we start to lean into what the composers are trying to do with their sense of moving forward, and we lean into the atonal sense of melody, and the harmony becomes much more structural and atonal as we look forward somewhat.
One of the other interesting things for me is that we tend to associate this kind of period murder mystery with large orchestras. And that's not what you did here. It's so fascinating to me. It sounds more like a chamber group. Really, it's just a handful of instruments. Am I right about that? And if that's true, why did you go that route?
Yes, that is absolutely correct. That is absolutely true. I went that route both because I felt that it was I felt that personally, I felt that's what the film needed, and also because Ken specifically asked for that, so I was really happy because I read the script, and then I had this feeling, and then I spoke to Ken, and he said, well, I really want this to be like a chamber piece. Like I don't want like a big orchestral sound. Like I really want it to be claustrophobic and atonal, and I would unnerving and dark, and so
Which
I
is
was
right up your alley.
It was just right up my alley. Exactly. So it just seemed like the perfect fit,
Yeah.
But also, I think that's just also so. It's such an interesting way to work with sound. I think when you're really microscopically looking at very small groups, but blowing them up also into a bigger perspective. Like I love that. I love that point of view.
So are we listening mostly to strings and woodwinds in this score?
Yes, yeah. There is pretty much almost only strings and woodwinds. Yeah.
Are you playing cello in this score?
I do play a little bit of cello, but I'm not. I'm mostly it's the LCO that's playing this.
Yeah, that's the London Contemporary Orchestra.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which you recorded at Abbey Road, is that right?
Yes, that is right. Yeah.
And I'm curious to know not just about the players themselves, but if you utilized any unusual groupings or playing techniques, perhaps, that you wanted to elicit from the players.
Yes, yeah. I think one of the big shifts that happened in this time in music history was the exploration of extended techniques, and that's what's especially in the scenes that are slightly more unnerving and lean more into the horror side of the film. That's where the extended playing technique really lent itself very well to this to the music, I thought. So it was a lot of like multiphonics and all kinds of trickeries in how to play. And then I also recorded quite a big part of the string orchestra. I recorded in a kind of seance setting, so they were sat in a circle as they did during the seance, in order to get this kind of surround feeling of and circular connection.
So you actually had them play in a circle?
Yes, yeah, I did.
Oh,
yeah.
That's fascinating. And what did that give you in terms of the sound you were looking for that would connect with those scenes?
Yeah. Well, it gave a sense of I think it gave a sense of presence and a kind of all-encompassing feeling in material that's rather simple. So a lot of this music is quite sparse in harmony. So a lot of it is kind of in unison, or like mostly in unison, like the more like movement pieces, and I think like with this placement where you have very sparse material, especially material that's happening or playing that's happening in unison, you can kind of have a sense of movement, spatial movement even though there's no harmonic movement happening at the same time. And I think that's very interesting, and I think that fit very well to the whole sound design of the film, because the sound is very present and is very all encompassing in the film. So I felt it lent itself very well to the Atmos Dolby mix.
And it's fascinating to me. I have seen the film, and the sound is as important as any other element in this picture. And I'm wondering, did you have any discussions with any of the sound people about what they would do, what you would do, and how it would work together?
Yes, we did. Yeah, we did. And it was very clear from the beginning, from the very early stages, that the sound would be very important. And it's, of course, like, it's even written in the script and in the dialogue, this invitation to constantly listen. She keeps telling us to listen in and listening, and so it really, the film kind of demands it of the audience repeatedly to remember to tune in with the ears into the house, because the house is telling a lot of the story, and it's giving a lot of the atmosphere is coming from the palazzo and from the sound. So we definitely had a lot of discussions about how to weave the music into these sounds and into this the auditory experience, which I always think it's really interesting. Like the more, in my opinion, like when the music and the sound design is really working together, the more coherent auditory experience you'll have. And I always find that really fascinating, to work in collaboration with the sound design.
Were you able to be in London during the recording sessions at Abbey Road?
Yes, this time I was able to be there. Because when we recorded Tar, I got COVID, so I had to do that recording session remotely. But this time around, I was able to go there in person and be there with the gang.
And was Kenneth Branagh there too?
He was there the whole time. Yeah, he was there for all the recordings and graced us with his wonderful, wonderful presence.
He's a delightful guy. He's fascinating to talk to.
He really is just such a beautiful human being. He really, truly is so elegant and articulate and just such a joy to be around, and definitely a joy to work with. Like he's so clear about his vision, and he's just such a master of his craft. It was really, really lovely to work with him.
And I noticed in the end titles the name of your husband, Sam Slater, as part of the team. What was his role here?
He in this project, he was he was like just my extra set of ears in the sound production department. So he was really overseeing the deliveries, and that everything was in the right place, and that that it was all sounding according to the highest standards, and that everything was set up properly, run properly.
And he knows how to do that.
He really does, and it's so incredibly wonderful to me for me to be able to to have that extra set of ears that knows me so well and knows exactly where I'm heading, and just to make sure that all the elements, because when you're working on a film, there's of course there's so many factors to take that come into play in putting everything together, and when you start to deliver, and all the cues have to come together, and all the channels, and so it's easy for things to get lost, and it's easy to lose track of things. But so it's really so wonderful to have that shadow that can say, like, hey, wait a minute, this is missing, or this is not good enough, or we need to change this, or so that's really great.
To go back to something that you said a little bit earlier, I wanted to ask you, Does the score, you were talking about how Hercule Poirot is going through his own sort of mental anguish during the course of this film. So would you say that the score reflects that in some way?
Yes, absolutely. I'd say the score is very much following his emotional journey of the film, and the sense of direction of the music, the sense of melody, and the sense of ease or unease, and all these elements are really directly influenced by his mental state.
Yeah. And there's a complete arc, really, to the score from start to finish, isn't there?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we begin this. We begin the circle in this I like to call it like the bardo state. It's the state between the living and the dead.
Which is, in a way, is sort of almost kind of neutral music, right?
Yes, it is. It is, and I always find it so interesting. The as you say, like neutral music. That's such an interesting term. Like what is neutral music? And I find that it's always so fascinating to me how we are moved by music and how music can put us in a state, and what does it require to put us in a certain state, or to bring us to a place, or to transport us, and through the use of melody, like how can a melody move us or not move us, or create the state, without maybe going anywhere, or without knowing how it is that it's moving us, or if it's moving us. That's what I find so endlessly fascinating about music, and this type of neutral music is a good way of phrasing it. I think is so fascinating because it's both a state and a non-state. It creates a space more than it creates an emotional reaction, so to say, and that's so fascinating about music. That I can do that.
So one of the other things about this movie is that it's in Dolby Atmos, which is, I think one of the great technological advances in terms of sound of our time. When you know that a movie that you're working on is going to be released in Atmos, does it impact how you write or how you record at all?
Yes, I think that, for example, when you know that it's going to be in Dolby Atmos, then you can really lean into these type of recording techniques, like I was saying, with placing the musicians in, or they're already in surround, because and we used like surround microphones to record these parts where the where the musicians were both in physical and digital surround, and it's really beautiful when you know that this is going to be the end result, and it's going to be, the audience is also going to experience the same thing as we experienced in the recording session.
Yeah, and I remember when they commissioned that piece for you that you wrote for the Academy Museum Composers Gallery, that was specifically designed for Atmos, as I recall.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely, yeah. That was really with that piece. I really wanted the audience to be able to enter a state of a sense of floating in the sound, really. So I really wanted to create the this losing the sense of gravity almost by losing, by creating a space that was completely blurred your visual field, because the museum, of course, is so it's such a lot to take in with your eyes. In the museum, it's so rich what it's giving you to your visual sensory senses. So I really wanted to create the space where you could really literally float or feel a sense of floating in a non-space and just be led through the spatialization of music and sound.
So how long were you on A Haunting in Venice, all told? Did it take a few months?
Yes, I think I was on for about 7 months or so. So I started working on it when they were still shooting, and that's when I had the initial meetings with Ken, and then I started writing music around that time somewhat. And I wanted to record it really properly with an ensemble, so I recorded a lot of music with an ensemble here in Berlin to be able to use in the editing process. So as they were starting to assemble the film, I provided the bulk of the kind of bigger pieces in order to use in the edit, and this is like my preferred way of working when the music and the edit and the film can really grow together in this fluid dialogue, so the edit can lean into the music, and then I receive a cut, and then I can respond to the edit, and then it can kind of flow back and forth in this natural unfolding, which I always think is very it's very rewarding for me to work in that way.
Yeah, I think it's smart filmmaking because it's a collaborative medium. And if the editor and the composer and the director are all sort of working together toward a final vision, I think it's just better for everybody.
I think so, yeah. I really, I know that not every composer, agrees with this, and many composers really want to have the visuals and the cut before they even start writing. And I completely respect and understand that. But for me, somehow I enjoy this, even though it takes 7 times longer, than the other way. It's somehow just like it's such a. I think it's such a great way to have a conversation through your mediums, to just literally exchange ideas, not just through dialogue, but also through actual, through your art form.
Your career is unlike a number of other Hollywood composers who just do film music. You do a lot of other things, including music for the concert hall and for many different venues. What are you working on now?
I am working on. I'm working on a record with my band Osmium, which is a kind of robot metal band, and we just finished a recording session a couple of days ago, which is very exciting. And we have a concert coming up at the Lincoln Center in New York in December. And then I'm working on some solo music as well that will hopefully turn into some sort of record and some sort of concertable music. and I'm working. Yeah, so I have kind of like a handful of projects that I'm working on, and another film, Hedda Gabler, is also in the making, which has unfortunately, because of the strike, been put on hold for a little while. But and then there's of course Joker too.
Now, is that finished, or are you still in the middle of that?
I am nearing the end of my process, so we're getting closer to recording. So it's all happening.
Well, it's all very exciting, and we're grateful to you for spending some time today. So thank you, Hildur, for being with us, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you for having me.
Many thanks to Hildur for joining us on the podcast today, and thanks to John for conducting another excellent interview. An extra special thanks to our friends at Disney for helping put this conversation together. Be sure to check out A Haunting in Venice, now in theaters. You can find links to tickets, as always, in our show notes. If you'd like even more conversations with inspiring artists and filmmakers about how they use technology to tell their stories, please be sure you are subscribed to us, the Dolby Institute podcast. You can find links to our show on all the major podcasting platforms, including the video version on YouTube, in our show notes. Or you can simply search for Dolby wherever you get your podcasts. If you're curious to know more about the Dolby Institute, head on over to dolbyinstitute.com. There you'll find information about all of our programs. You can access the entire library of episodes of this podcast, and you can sign up for our mailing list. Until next time, thanks again for joining us. This is the Dolby Institute podcast. I'm your host, Glenn Kaiser. Our producer and editor is Michael Coleman. Our executive producers are Amanda Schneider and Jack Ferry, with additional editing by Matt Nixon. Thanks for joining us.